comes to race, we've inherited a legacy of overt and institutionalized white supremacy. For the first 300 years, going back to the colonial days before we were a nation, go back to the mid-1600s, all the way up to the mid-1900s, a 3-century process with maybe, 11, 12 generations involved, a 300-year period of formal white supremacy, a 300-year period of institutionalized, formal, and legal white supremacy, a legacy that elevated every single person called white above every single person who wasn't, without a single solitary exception anywhere in the country. That is not an arguable statement. There will be other things that I will say this evening with which you are free to disagree. That ain't one of them. That's a matter of historical fact. Now, we don't use that language. I know we don't like to say that. Sounds so horrible, sounds unpatriotic, sounds almost un-American to the untrained ear. But the reality is, that's what we were, a system of racial fascism. Now, that legacy doesn't go away like a video game gets to start over when you don't like the way it went the first time. You don't get to hit reset, replay, start over, and then erase everything that just went down. That legacy is inherited. We didn't even pretend, really, until 45 or 50 years ago that we were serious about racial equity. I mean, I guess we did pretend, but we weren't very good at it. Not so much that anybody really could look at it and say with any kind of a straight face that we had convinced them that we were about that. So what's the effect of that today? I know some people think, well, that's true, but what is the inertia? What is the holdover consequence? Well, there are a lot of them, but among them, one of the chief things that we see emerging out of that legacy is the fact that today, as I speak, not 20 years ago, 30, 40, 50, 100 years ago, but right now, tonight, in 2010, the average white family in the United States has 11 times the net worth of the average black family, 8 times the net worth of the average Latino family. It isn't because we've worked harder. We've studied our history. We know some of the hardest work ever done on this soil was done by black and brown bodies. They weren't remunerated for it, commensurate with the effort, but they certainly put forth the effort, whether we're talking about enslaved African folks, Latino folks who had half of their nation jacked from them in a war of aggression that we started, make no mistake, whether we're talking about indigenous people whose land had to be jacked, whether we're talking about Chinese Americans who were brought to this country in large part to build the railroads that made the transcontinental economy possible in the first place. We are talking about a legacy of people of color doing some of the hardest work, so that wealth gap is not about merit. It's not about initiative. It's not about work ethic. It's not about white folks having some superior saving strategies. And God knows it's not about white folks possessing some superior investment wisdom about which people of color are lacking. I mean, for the love of God, if we have learned nothing in the last 18 months of global economic meltdown, let us at least take this away, that a handful of rich white men are in fact capable of losing a hell of a lot of money without any help from black people, without any help from Mexicans, without any help from people of color, no people of color anywhere near them, just a handful of rich white dudes because of their own incompetence, their own unethical behavior, even in some cases their illegality, able to wipe off trillions of dollars of global wealth from the balance sheets of the world economy. That's what has happened. It was all before Barack Obama moved into the White House, so we can't put it on him either. In the 18 months, the last 18 months of the previous administration, 20% of all the wealth of the United States was eliminated. 20% of all the wealth, value of all the stuff accumulated over 230 some odd years was wiped out in the last 18 months because of the actions of global economic elites who thought that they could sell and trade derivatives and never worry about those. Even know what a derivative is? If you don't worry. Neither do the people who were selling them. These are economic instruments that the people who deal them can't explain to you. These are bets on bets. Right? You're going to take a bet on whether that bet is going to come clean. You're going to take a bet on who's going to win that bet. This is all fine if you're like in the basement of your fraternity playing for beer. Not so good when you're playing with other people's money in the global economy. Oops, lost it. Sorry. Trillions of dollars, $12 trillion of American wealth wiped out. Wiped out. Because of the actions of a very narrow elite. Now, I'm not saying it was because they were rich white men that they did it. I'm not saying there's something about rich white dudes that makes them venal and corrupt and evil and incompetent and criminal. I'm saying if they'd all been black, that's exactly what somebody would have been saying. People of color can't steal that. Now, I was going to say if they've been poor, but poor people cannot steal that kind of money. It's impossible. Poor folks can't do half the damage to the economy or to any of us individually that these folks did. Right? It would take like half a millennia for black and brown street thugs to rob you of that much money. They would have to steal around the clock, like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, never taking a break to eat, use the bathroom, or sleep. Just hand in the pocket, hand in the pocket, hand in the pocket. And after 500 years, they still would not have wiped out $12 trillion. And yet we're still more afraid of the average black or brown young man crossing the street in a hoodie than we are a handful of rich white guys driving around in their Lexuses, or maybe the proper term is Lexi. I don't know the plural form, but you get the point.